Karen got one of those lay reading days that you dream of as far as restoring. And also, actually, I didn't say this at the beginning of the service, but we definitely want to welcome Jennifer Johnson. She's here subbing in for Maris, so to Jennifer, great to have you. This morning we're going to, I'm not sure how to package this, other than I thought I had a beat on the sermon pretty early in the week, and as you've heard me say before, suddenly something came, smacked me in the side of the head, spun me around about 24 times, and so whatever's going to come out of my mouth now is the result of that spiritual dizziness. When we look at these scriptures in Leviticus and Matthew, we see something that's very, very key about our call to follow Christ. And what is key about it is it's a sense of intentionality. When you look at the passage in Leviticus, there's this sense of the writer is saying, look, there are people that you know have a need. This particular need is they don't have enough to eat. So when you go and harvest, don't take it all. Leave some behind so that they can go and they can pick up the leftovers, they can pick up what you didn't take, and then they'll be provided for. And it's this sense of being conscious of the need and then acting with inspiration and intention to meet it. When you look at the passage in Matthew, we see the same kind of a thing. Where it says, I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was hungry, and you fed me. I was in prison, and you visited me. I was sick, and you helped me. And there's this sense that we see a need, and rather than pass it by, or rather than just go up to somebody and say, well, I'll pray for you, and off we go, and they're still sitting there hungry, or they're still in prison and lonely, or they're still bleeding and in need of medical care, we do something about it. We take action. And it's not just an action that is the equivalent of kind of throwing money at the problem. But it's action that is intentional and it's personal. It's relational. It's this sense that part of how we bridge the gap between us and the world, how we introduce people to Jesus in this world, is through these relationships that we build through meeting the needs in the world around us. And so today I want to take a few minutes, and the sermon's called Perspectives, and I want to share a couple of things, and I'm hoping will maybe lead to giving us some perspective in a number of different ways, but really kind of funneling it down to this sense of intentionality and who we are as people of faith. When I was working down in Baltimore, in the group home campus, I remember we had this family of 4 brothers who were all staying with us. And they came when they were relatively young. We had, I think one of them came when he was as young as maybe 6 or 7 years old, and then they were just a couple years apart. The older 2 were twins. But I want to give you a little bit of perspective first on what it means to have 4 brothers in placement together at the same time. How many of you know that our government likes to cut corners on things? I know. How many of you know that one of the things that is often cut is the public welfare fund? So when you're talking about roughly $100 a day that the state pays to keep one of those brothers in placement, what you realize is that their home situation was so bad that the government was going to pay $400 a day for these kids to be with us. In other words, when they went in and looked at the home situation, they looked at the family, they said, this is so abusive, this is so neglectful, you are in such danger that we need to take you out of this home and put you someplace safe. And so they came to us. Now, to give a quick rundown of what life in placement is like, how many of you have people creep into your room and stare at you while you sleep? Okay, Sharon Okay? Now I'm going to paint this picture a little bit less. Well, it's going to sound like, well, you'll get the picture. When you live in a group home, when you're living with a dozen other kids, someone has to make sure everybody's safe and nobody's thrown the coop. So throughout the night, you have people walking in and cracking your door and looking in to see you sleep. You have a dozen kids and 8 staff sharing 2 bathrooms. They do chores in the morning and the evening. There's a reason for that. You don't have Little League. You don't have town ball. You have a recreation director. And then you have scheduled gym time. When you come home from school, you don't go to the refrigerator and just open the fridge and grab whatever you want. You wait to see what the staff are going to give to you as the snack option for the day. Dinner time and breakfast time and during the summer, lunchtime are not, the timing of it is not optional. You go the same time every single day, and you don't go and sit in your nice kitchen at home. You go into a cafeteria with about 40 or 50 other kids and the staff that are there, and that's where you have your meals. You don't have parents and aunts and uncles that are living with you and raising you. You have staff, psychologists, psychiatrists, and all kinds of other therapists. Your schedule is not something that you get to make. It's made for you. And, well, let me ask you this. How many of you think that anybody should spend 3 to 4 years of their childhood there? Now, I want to tell you something. I worked there. The people there were and still are marvelous. And they do everything they can to make it as comfortable and as safe and kind and loving for these kids as they can. But there's just a reality that when you live in an institution, it's an institution. And I guess to maybe be a little bit more of a turn, most of those kids were not in there because they had done anything wrong. They were there because the people that were supposed to watch over them didn't, wouldn't, couldn't. And so they were yanked away from their family, yanked away from their friends, yanked away from everything that was familiar, and they were put into the system. And that's where many of them stayed for years. And I knew kids who we saw when they were like 11 or 12, and they didn't leave us until they were 21. Still talk with some of them. Now, these 4 brothers, the 2 younger ones both had some developmental things going on. And I guess the next to the youngest, he had a condition where his upper arms didn't grow. They didn't develop. He only had forearms, and the hands had some developmental things going on as well. So on top of everything else, he was struggling with this condition. And I bring him up. He's a cool guy. A lot of the brothers were cool guys. I'm sure they still are. They were intelligent, charming, fun, good kids, which is saying something considering, the background that they came from. But the reality of it is, when you are born into a certain environment, and you have those physical challenges also going on, you got to develop another kind of an exterior. Because if you are perceived as weak, you are then a target. And so you got to develop some kind of a hard shell. You make choices that you wouldn't otherwise make, because that's just how you get a reputation, so hopefully people don't mess with you quite as much and clown you around. And this young man, when he was about 11 years old, decided that he was going to establish his reputation by going AWOL. And I still can't figure out how he hid it all. The one day, this place didn't have like walls and alarms and stuff like that. You know, people could just walk right on and off the campus. And you know, he had waited till the staff weren't paying attention for a second, and he kind of skedaddled out the door and started walking up towards the bus stop. And the staff turned around and realized he was gone, and they sent a few people looking for him. And they see him walking up the street on the sidewalk with so much change in his pockets, his pants were always hanging down around his knees. And he saw him and he tried to run, but you know, it didn't work too well. And so they got him, they brought him back in. And so a little while later, this 11-year-old kid, with this condition, figured out how to steal the van keys to the unit. And at night, when the staff went to go to the bathroom, snuck out of the unit, and this little guy, this big, with only forearms, drove the van to Baltimore. Now, I don't know how he reached the pedals. But my point here is that what you've got as a young man, how many would you say that takes a lot of heart? And that takes a lot of guts. All right? Now, it would be real easy to say, you stole the van! But when you look at where this kid came from, and you realize who he is inside, the goodness that is inside him, and what the decisions he was kind of forced into because of his predicament, you know, hopefully we can look at that side of his personality that caused him to be ingenious enough to steal the keys and figure out how to drive that thing, and say, wow, that kid has some potential. Some real potential. And here's where we're going with this. If you were to have seen this young man and knew he was in a group home, most people would look at him and they would think that his most significant challenges were his arms and living in a group home. Do you think those were his most significant challenges? No. Not by a long shot. Because what you're looking at, when you saw that young man, it wasn't just what was on the surface or where he lived. It was everything that had led him up to that point. It was all of the fear and the hurt and the loneliness and the confusion and the pain, the anger, and also some of the joys and the celebrations. But all of this stuff that had brought him to that place and forced him into that corner and said, this is the only way, this is the only thing you can do. Behind those eyes was that lifetime of backstory. That is the challenge. That was his challenge. Everything going on in here. And I bring him up and this up because it is no different day to day with the people that we rub elbows with. Our neighbors, our friends, even our family, our co-workers, our classmates, our students, you know, the people that we go and go out to dinner with. Think about that. Behind every set of eyeballs in this room, there's an entire life story. Behind every set of eyeballs that you gaze upon every single day is an entire life story. And how much of that is hard? How many people do we run across that behind that firm handshake is in reality an insecure, panicky person that is so afraid that they're going to lose what they got that lying has become second nature to them? How many people do we come across that behind that jovial laugh and that wonderful smile is the confusion and the uncertainty and the hurt that comes from a family that's in shambles? How many people do we come across that are quick with a joke or a nice witty phrase, But if you could just peel back the top of their head and see what was going on, you would see someone that's in a life and death battle with addiction. And they don't know who to turn to. Because God forbid you let people know that you have a weakness. God forbid people know that you have pain. There's something wrong. It's everywhere. The question is, do we see it? Do we recognize it? And I want us to go here today because I want to continue to challenge us as a congregation. Look around, look at the people around you. Smile at them if you want to, stick up your tongue. Are you looking at people who are good people? So far as you know. That's what I see. That's what I see. But I think, I want to challenge us as Christian people, as people that claim to follow and want to break the light of Christ into this world, that as we go forward in the coming year, I was thinking about this the other day, and I was, I set goals in my own head. Sometimes I tell you about it. Sometimes I'll tell you this one. But I set this goal in my head and said, okay, in the next year, what do I want to see from this congregation? What do I want to see us do? And I said, I want to see us get into the thick of it a little bit more. I want to see us get into the community a little bit more. Our own neighborhood, and do something that's going to bring people to Jesus. And it hit me that what brings people, how many of you ever, you ever hear the song, People Need the Lord? Yes? No? Okay. Or how many of you, around conversation and you're lamenting about the condition of the world and someone says, well, they just need Jesus. You got to extend it, Well, that's true. But they don't get that relationship just by us telling them they need it. They get it because Christians, the representative of the one that loves us all, the representative on earth of the one whose arms are open wide, saying, I want you. I will take all of your hurt, all of your pain, all of your baggage, and I will love you through it. I will forgive it, and I will help you find a new path and a new way to be that is directly in line with God's will for your life. They need that. They need us. They need the church to step out and invite them in, not at their point of comfort, but at their point of need. Because that's where the change happens. And so that's my challenge to us today, and as we go forward in the coming year. What is it out there that this community needs? I've got a number of ideas just from conversations that I've had. But it's one thing if you meet somebody and they're telling you about their problem with their addiction, or they're talking about their issue in their family or something like that, and you say, well, I'll pray for you. It's something else entirely if you can look at them and say, you know what? There's an AA group that meets at my church, and I would love to go with you. And they say, yeah, but you're not an alcoholic. And you say, maybe not, but if you need a friendly face to be in a room with you, I'll be that face. Or when you hear a couple that's going through a horrible time, and instead of saying, I'll pray for you, you say, you know what, we've got a couples group that meets every other month at my church. And it's just people talking about real problems in real life and sharing how they have made it through, how they're working through it, and loving each other in the midst of it. Or someone talking about how hard it is to be single today. We can say to them, my group has a singles group, and it meets down in Damon's twice a month. And they just get together and hang out and love each other and support each other in the craziness of what it means to live in a world that doesn't know what it expects from a person in terms of relationships, and singleness and marriedness and all these other things. Now, the challenge, though, for us is this. Okay? I'm going to put some of y'all on the spot here. How many of you are married? How many of you have a good relationship with your spouse? That's the tricky one. Jim just said, don't hesitate, just put a hand up. Now, the reason I say that is because many times we look at a situation and we say, yeah, but I don't have that problem, so why would I need to do something like that? I'm going to tell you why. Because if you have a good relationship, the couples out there don't need somebody to look to. Because if you have figured out how to help your child through being bullied, well, there's parents that need to hear your story so that they can understand different ways that have worked to help our kids through this problem in our world. And that's the ministry of the church. That it's about the other. What can I do for them? And when we do for them, something magical happens. That spirit inside of us springs alive and smiles, and we feel the warmth of God welling up within us. And then that light of Christ starts to become a beacon, and people see that and they get drawn in because they know there's something different. They know that this is a place that doesn't just talk about the love of Christ. This is a place that goes out there and shows it to people. That's what's attractive about the people called Christians. And I want you to hear this correctly, all right? Because I'm not saying you naughty people aren't doing anything, all right? Because that's not true. The number of things that people in this congregation do day in and day out is phenomenal. It truly is. There's ministry in individuals' lives that makes my jaw drop in admiration. What I am calling us to, though, is something united. I'm calling us to something as a community that we do together. I'm calling us to something that we don't do under the banner of anyone other than the name of Christ. And when we do that, that transforms the world more and more into the kingdom of God and invites people to participate in the love and greatness of the Savior that we call our own, Jesus Christ. Amen?